Hey guys, welcome back to Rudder Innovations, where today we're going to be learning how to change out the valve cover gaskets and spark plug seals on this 2008 Honda Odyssey. Here we go. You can start by using a flathead to remove your engine cover by turning the two plastic fasteners to the left, a quarter turn, and lifting up. Now we're going to remove all the electronics that are plugged into this. We're going to pull all of these hoses off just to give us room so we can get to the valve covers. Now we'll loosen the 10mm band clamp attaching the intake to the throttle body and the hoses that connect the intake manifold, and rear valve cover. Alright, so I took this, pulled it out of my intake, pulled it out of here. I disconnected this hose below it so I could turn it. This one's a little tough to get out, so I'm going to turn it back and forth and pull it. Then you can remove the small hose going into the intake manifold and the larger hose with a clamp on the other side. On the bottom of the throttle body, there's a hose that circulates coolant, so make sure you're careful when removing it, and you can prop it up or use a zip tie to hold it in place so it doesn't leak throughout the process. Next, we'll remove the 10mm bolts and two 10mm nuts that hold on the top plate of the intake manifold. If you're gentle with the gasket and don't bend it, you shouldn't have to purchase a new one. Now we'll remove the 7 12mm bolts and two 12mm nuts holding on the intake manifold. It was easier for me to detach the hose on top of the manifold and remove two 10mm bolts than it was for me to detach the line below, so I did that next. I decided to loosen the four 8mm bolts on the air intake to slide it out of the way. After that, the intake manifold will be free and clear to remove. If you're careful not to bend the gasket underneath, you should be able to reuse it. Make sure to cover the top of your engine so you don't drop anything down inside, and as you can see, I use blue painter's tape. We're going to do the front valve cover gasket first, so we'll start by removing the bolt and electrical connection for each spark plug. It's a 6mm hex or Allen wrench bolt here for each one of these spark plugs. You're going to disconnect each one of them, and then we're going to pull them out. All right, now what we're going to do is pull the dipstick. We're going to remove these 10mm bolts for this bracket holding the spark plug wiring. And we're also going to remove, there's a connection right here. We're going to pull loose, and there's another one right underneath it, right there. We're going to pull that out, which will free up this harness. Also, there's a little gray plug right here that I pushed in with the screwdriver, these little tabs that were attached right there. After getting the wiring harness out of the way, you can loosen the 5 10mm valve cover bolts. The top metal bolt is shorter than all the other bolts. All right, to remove the valve cover, it's going to be stuck on there pretty good with the old gasket. I just pulled right here where the oil fill is just to remove and break loose this part. Now I'm just going to work it around till we get all the old gasket loose. Then we'll slowly remove it like that. Once removing the valve cover, I cleaned off the surface where the new gasket would be seated using a clean cloth. To remove the spark plug seal, hammer a flathead screwdriver between the seal and valve cover and pry the old seal out. Be careful not to damage the valve cover in the process. Next, you can remove the old valve cover gasket. There was oil in the channel where the gasket was, so I cleaned it out with a cloth. If you want the whole kit number for all of the seals and gaskets, this is it. Make sure to lubricate the new seals with oil before installing them, and I use a 30mm socket to drive in each seal. You want to hit these down as evenly as possible, making sure it's bottomed out and flush with the surrounding lip on the valve cover. Now that the spark plug seals are in, you can install the new valve cover gasket. Notice there are two tabs on the spark plug side facing what would be the front of the engine, and there are also little notches to help hold the gasket in place. After installing it, make sure it's firmly and evenly seated in the channel. When reinstalling the valve cover, use the spark plug tubes to help line it up properly and slide your finger around the new spark plug seals to help them over the tube so you can easily slide the valve cover down into position. For each one of these bolts, you want to separate the little grommet. Pull the old one off, or you can cut it off, which is what I'm going to do with some clippers, and then we'll slide the new one back on. putting this wrench on there, just have a little bit more meat on it so it's not a bolt digging into my hand. And then you're gonna take the new rubber grommet and just slide it over the lip of the screw. Just like that. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hand tighten all of these bolts for the valve cover. And then I'm going to snug them up in this order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm gonna come back with the torque specs, which is 8.7 foot-pounds of torque. I'm gonna be honest with you, I did everything with a 1/4-inch drive ratchet first, hand tight. These bolts do bottom out because of that flange at the bottom. I've also read that you're supposed to just stop once it bottoms out. I did put this torque wrench on there. I got to 8.4, some of them were 8.7. I'll be honest with you, I just don't want to break a bolt off in here. Not really wanting to do that. So 8.4 was good enough for me. We'll go ahead and put my spark plug igniters back on. Feed the 6mm hex bolts back through the spark plug. Just get them snug. I'm using a 1/4-inch ratchet. We'll go ahead and flip this electrical harness back over. We'll get that back on. There are two 10mm bolts that hold the bracket on. Electrical for our spark plugs back. We'll put these plugs that were down here on the right side as well. All right, next for the back valve cover, we have this bracket held on with a 10mm there. We've got another 10mm right here on the end of this harness. There's another 10mm right here on the back side of this. We'll start by taking those off. Right here on the timing belt cover, there's a little route for the wire that just fits into this clip right here. You're gonna pull this out. All right, to make a little bit more room to get this rear valve cover off and give some more space for this harness up here, there is a plug down here that you can pry this little switch off and slide it off of the bracket. Unattach this clip right here that's connected to it, and it clips right on this metal bracket. You just pull up on the tab and slide off. Also gonna be removing this 10mm ground right here. I'm gonna remove the spark plug igniters with this 6mm hex wrench. Fuel injecting lines. Using a small flathead screwdriver to move these clips to be able to get this bolt right here. Now we'll remove the 5 10mm valve cover bolts, and the top bolt is shorter on this one too. To break the seal on the rear valve cover, I held here, I had a paint scraper, which is just a wider thing than a flathead screwdriver. Stuck it right here and pried on this bracket right here. Just lift it up and break the seal. I'll go ahead and lift it the rest of the way off. All right, got the rear valve cover back with a new gasket, new seals for my spark plugs. I'm gonna go ahead and slide it back in there. We'll go ahead and change out the little grommets for each one of these holes for the 10mm bolts that go in here, and then we'll get those in too. All right, you're gonna tighten these down in this order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that. You're gonna do them to 8.7 foot-pounds of torque. It said to tighten these in 3 steps, so I did it by hand first. Now I'm just doing it, snugging them up with a ratchet in order, a little at a time. And then I'm gonna go back with my torque. Now we're gonna go ahead and reconnect fuel injector plugs. Reconnect this ground. To reconnect the two 10mm bolts to get this harness back together. Just one here, there's one here. There's a bracket back here that holds our power steering hose. Hook that back up. Put the spark plug igniters back in. Hook the electrical clips back in and reroute the wire that fits in the timing belt cover slot, which is right there. All right, so I'll wipe this down, pull off the tape. I'm just gonna wipe down that surface a little bit. This flat portion, the little metal grommet, needs to go up. Put your dipstick back in. I did wipe down the bottom of this. You do wanna watch out because there's antifreeze coming out of this and this. So you just wanna make sure not to knock it when you put it back on, or if you do, just try and make sure it's upright or get it connected to the bottom right here. It's lined up. Try and get this hose lined up with this as well. There we go. Stop that thing from dripping everywhere. Go ahead and get some of these connections back together. Go ahead and get these two bolts back in, 10 millimeter. Go ahead and reconnect this hose. I tightened up the 9 12 millimeter intake manifold nuts and bolts in this order. Snug them down to 16 foot-pounds of torque. All right, I got a couple of these to 16. At some point, you just gotta go with your gut. I'm just afraid I'm gonna break a bolt or strip out some threads in there. Not really doing that today, and I'm gonna call it a day there. So I need to get this hose hooked back up. Get this back connected. This tiny line has coolant going through it. And the other one's gonna be a vacuum. Line up your air intake and tighten the 10 millimeter bolt on the band. Put our gasket back on. I did wipe down the surface of the side that's going down. I'm gonna wipe off this surface too because it looks like it's kind of nasty. I'll also wipe off the surface of this. I tightened up the 12 10 millimeter nuts and bolts on the top plate of the intake manifold in this order. So I'm gonna do them all hand tight first, and then we're gonna torque them down to 8.7 foot-pounds of torque. Also, I gotta put these 8 millimeters back. Once you're done, make sure everything is connected. You didn't miss anything. Fire it up and see how it's running. No check engine light or anything. Don't hear any air leaks. Seems good, get that covered. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you like this video, like it. If you're watching on a medium, you can subscribe. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Peace and God bless.